Not quite got the pulleys lined up, but the idea here is that I can easily slide this pulley along this shaft, and there's plenty of movement there. It only needs about a few millimeters, 10-12 millimeters of movement to be able to change it from that pulley to that pulley if you wanted to change the speed slightly. But that's I'm mainly concerned about alignment. Now, most of this video is for me because what I'm looking at is where I would drill that plate there to get the mounting holes. And what I've managed to do on the other side is line up one of the bolts that's in there, just in there, with the inner hole. So that's the bottom bolt on here, and what I'm hoping then is that by elongating either the top hole there or the bottom hole there, we can get this side anyway, this side lined up. So if I pull back so I can see it, fortunately this foot plate has got enough room to do that, so that we can get those bolts lined up and get it mounted onto that plate there, and then make sure the holes on this side are lined up. So I'm hoping that with the amount of movement I've got on that pulley, that by pulling the motor out, taking that plate off, and the plate, you can just see the top of it through there. Not the top of it, but you can see where it would hang. I've tied those slotted hangers out of the way. It would hang from there, and there's enough swing because I've got it's clear of the wall at the back, clear of the bottom, so there's no problems about clearance of the motor from anything. It's got room to swing down, and then we can let it hang, find a pulley that will fit, and then get it all lined up properly. That's it. I'm pausing because I'm wondering, am I at a point now where I will pull the motor out and drop that plate off and drill it? So the thing I've got lined up there is the inner hole on that with the bottom bolt, and if I line up the top one as well, I can move either. I don't care which one moves because that gives me an approximate line up on there. That should be fine. Having got that new pulley onto there, I think I'm close to getting the motor fitted. I'm going to give myself a little time to think about this before I drill. I've got the dimensions of the feet on here, the holes in the feet, 100 millimeters that way, 140 millimeters that way. This base plate can then be marked out more accurately, and we can decide where the holes are going to go. Yep, I'm just thinking about it, and then we will go ahead and get those holes drilled. So I've drilled 4 8mm holes in the plate, just big enough for these mounting bolts to go through. Now what I want to do is see if it will line up with the feet on the motor. I've got the cork resilient blocks which will hold the bolts while we position it over the motor. Let's see what we get up to. The motor is mounted. There it is. That's the 3-phase motor. So it's repurposed. It's off a completely different sort of machine with a 24mm shaft, or whatever size shaft it is. The bit that's caused me the most damage has been putting the pin through. You have to support the motor while you put this pin here through at the bottom of the bracket, and it's got to be lined up quite accurately. And then as you're getting the pin right to the other end, of course, pushing it through so it comes out this hole, it's hard, and that has just caused me a little bit of damage there. But apart from that, everything else is gone on. I've tightened up the bolts, which I was trying to drill a hole here. I've drilled a hole here because there's an Allen key in there, not an Allen key, an Allen bolt in there holding this part onto the head of the lathe, but I've managed to do the bolt up. All seems to be tight enough. The motor's mounted onto the plate now with 4 new holes drilled through that plate. I don't know how much resilience is going to be left in these cork blocks underneath, because I've tightened it up enough that I don't think the nuts are going to unwind and come off. As you can see, the cork is deformed a little bit, which will remove its resilience. It's got resilience when it's got room to compress and expand. There'll probably be a little bit left, but I've compressed it up quite a bit, just because the nuts didn't seem tight enough. They aren't nylock or locking nuts, they're just normal nuts. I didn't want them to be able to come loose. That's not tightened up there. I've just got the motor resting. A couple of things to do. One is put a 3-way connector strip in there, or maybe 4-way. Those went into went into the variable frequency drive, but I don't want to mount the variable frequency drive down there. I want it somewhere where it's nearer eye level up there, so I just need to extend the wires up a little bit. I could rewire it with some 4-wire cable into the block on the bottom of the motor, but I have little intention of taking the motor off if I don't need to, so I'm just going to extend the wires. I'm hoping that will be fine. I've forgotten what signal and control wires we've got here. One of these, or a pair of these, will need to be shorted, yes, it needs to be shorted because that's going to be the e-stop, so I'll have to look at the instructions. But wiring it into here, the 3 phases and then the earth, it is possible to just control the motor speed from the front panel, and then ultimately, obviously, what you need to do is add your e-stop and your speed controller onto those other wires which we've got coming out there, and I'll do some work finding that out. That's it. I need to move the pulley in a little bit. If I assume my camera's about in line now, you can see that the pulley is out at the end of the shaft, but there's plenty of movement on that shaft to move it across, and I can even decide which of these pulleys here I'd like it to line up with. So if I want it to line up with the larger one to get the greatest reduction, then I can. But yes, the pulley is going to move, and I can now measure the size of belt that I need, given that that is about mid slot there. Right, so far so good. Break for Christmas. In the new year we'll get back to it. That the manual for the Altivar 11 is widely available in PDF form on a number of sites, and therefore the wiring diagram for it, which is way down here. There we go. You can see there it lists all the terminals. We've got the terminals here, which are down at the bottom, and then we've got a little diagram, and if I point my mouse at it, this is where the speed control potentiometer goes. There's also a switch which controls direction. Not sure which switch that is, but there's one for controlling direction, and that's where the power goes in. Tells you a little bit about it. So, sorry, I'm flicking through, but we've got 2-wire control and 3-wire control, and then forward and reverse control. And one of them will also be an e-stop function, and so that will allow me to wire up a remote unit to control the speed of the motor and its direction. I'm just going to have a look at that now. I'll sort that out for myself, and then I need to order up some components to build up a remote control box.